Participation. Everybody wants participation, but how do you get it? How can you get a team to work together? And when you get them working together, how do you get them to move forward together? The technology of participation turns the diversity of a group into its greatest gift and generates decisions and action that everyone can agree with. The technology of participation, or TOP methods, developed by the Institute of Cultural Affairs, have been used in thousands of companies, organizations, and communities on every continent since the early 1970s. With TOP methods, the greater the number of stakeholders that are involved in the process, the more creativity and motivation will be gathered, and more effective and long-lasting the results will be. This video describes the theory and use of the ToPFocusedConversation conversation method, which is the foundation for all TOP planning technologies, and the TOP Consensus Workshop, which is a basic tool for any group facilitator. The ToPFocusedConversation conversation method is designed to improve communication, promote trust, forge team spirit, and enhance creativity. This method is the most versatile of the technology of participation and can be used in almost any situation. We call the focused conversation method a life method because it is based on a pattern of thinking that we all use when we think clearly. By recognizing this basic pattern of thinking, you will have access to a very powerful tool that can help you in your individual work, in one-on-one relations, and in group settings. An easy way to illustrate this pattern of thinking is from a simple everyday example. Suppose you are walking along when suddenly your friend Bob throws something toward you. You are faced with a decision. Will you catch it, or will you step aside? You have only a brief moment to decide, but several complex levels of thinking are put into play to make the decision. The first is the objective level, which is about facts and perception. In this case, you simply perceive something. An object is in the air. You don't know what it is. It's coming straight at you. It looks hard. Bob threw it. The second is the reflective level. You make associations, relate your perception to previous things, and experience emotion. You feel the shock of surprise and are slightly threatened. You've never been a good catcher. You like Bob, who would never hurt you. You are somewhat confused. The third is the interpretive level. At this level, you interpret the significance of what is happening. You guess it is a softball. You think you can probably catch it. If you catch it, you might impress Bob. The fourth is the decisional level. At this level, you decide what you're going to do and begin to act on your decision. In this case, you decide to catch the object. These four levels of thinking usually occur unconsciously when a quick decision is required, like catching a thrown object. They can also be unconscious over longer periods of time for other decisions. But the pattern of thinking is constantly occurring in everyday life. This diagram shows how the four levels of thinking are related. Objective or O level is represented by a series of lines, the basic stuff of life. These are objective facts, what you see, hear, or perceive in many other ways. This level of thinking is about what you perceive through your senses. However, you constantly react to this perceived reality. There is limited conscious control over this reflective or R level of thinking. You make fast unconscious associations between this and past experiences, real or imagined. You sometimes have gut-level emotional responses to the perceived reality. You do, however, control the interpretive or I level of thinking. At this level, you begin to interpret the significance of both the objective reality and your reflective response. At the interpretive level, you create meaning and assign value to the experience. You consider implications for the future and weigh up pros and cons of alternative options. Finally, the perceived reality, your reflective response, and your interpretation of its meaning become the object of a decision. The decisional or D level may be to do nothing, or it may be to take some action now or in the future. The D level could make a pronouncement on the situation, like scary or indifferent, or could label it priority. These 4 levels of thinking can occur in a split second, like when a dog barks at you, or over an hour when you're reviewing a financial statement, or over several days when considering a new job. They are often not linear, but cycle back and forth. But each level can affect the final decision. In the example of the thrown object, if you cannot see the object clearly, you might not try to catch it. If you do not associate with Bob as a good friend, you might move aside. If you interpret from the size and speed that it is too heavy, you might not try. You might decide to send a message to Bob and let the object drop.
Let's look at another example of these 4 levels of the thought process. Imagine that your accounting section has, unknown to you, created a new chart showing a downturn in sales and put it on the wall in a place where you often walk by. You stroll by unaware of anything until suddenly you look up and see a big sales chart with a plummeting arrow. The first level is simply an objective one of perception. The fact of plummeting sales makes itself evident. Next comes your reflective gut-level response. You're indignant that somebody put the chart there. Heads will roll. You're angry with your colleague, Bob, who didn't send the information about your big sale to the accounting department. You're suddenly gripped by a stomach-turning fear. Didn't Maria just lose her job last week? But then you stop and really think about the chart. Perhaps it wasn't put there for your personal benefit, but for someone else's. Maybe the managers are trying to show you you're constantly behind in sending in your sales reports. Maybe it's Lakshmi playing a practical joke. Then you stop and put all the pieces together, the chart, your response, and your interpretation of it, and decide what you're going to do about it. I'll get those reports in right away and just show them who's the best. Since everybody's sales are down, I'll just work harder and go after that promotion I really deserve. Let's consider for a moment some of the interactions that occur between 2 people. You ask Lakshmi about the results of a meeting you couldn't attend, and she tells you that a decision was made to slash a department, and that she has already started thinking about implementing it. Lakshmi has told you only about the decisional level, and you are probably left scratching your head. What's going on? Perhaps you bump into Bob first and ask him about the meeting. He gives you a detailed and factual but boring account of who said what. He is telling you about the objective level, and you are probably left anxious to know what really happened. When you ask Maria about the meeting, she responds from her reflective level and says she's having a hard time talking about it because she's so upset about the whole thing. She says everybody was angry and it reminded her of that terrible last job that she had. You get caught up in her emotion, but you still don't know what happened.
If you are aware of the objective, reflective, interpretive, and decisional levels of thinking, you will be less subject to manipulation by others. If you recognize how the 4 levels of the thinking process work in other people, you can help unblock the decision-making process. For example, a straightforward committee recommendation can be stalled indefinitely by members of a committee who mention some discomfort with the recommendation. If you take the time to find out what the discomfort is, you might be able to get them to suggest a small acceptable change to the recommendation. At the objective level, you want to be sure that all members have read and understood the language used in the written recommendation. A couple of words misunderstood might be the cause of the problem. At the reflective level, you might check if this recommendation has reminded them of some other previous experience in the past, negative, positive, painful, or otherwise. A negative or painful association could be the cause of the block. At the interpretive level, you want to find out if they have considered the importance and impact of the recommendation, if it is implemented, and if it is not. They could discuss the implication of ideas that they have. At the decisional level, you want to find out what change will improve the recommendation and how it will be implemented, and by whom and when.
Let's look at what usually happens in a traditional planning group when the thinking process is short-circuited, going from information directly to decision. The group leader gives some information and then asks what everyone thinks should be done. Lakshmi hears the information and immediately processes it to the decisional level, telling everyone else her decision about what she thinks should be done. She will likely want everyone to decide quickly as well, and might spend the entire meeting defending or revising her decision. Bob, on the other hand, is still at the objective level, stalled while trying to piece together some basic information that he doesn't fully understand. He may not have read the notes sent out ahead of time. Maria is at the reflective level, with a lot of associations with this topic. She's very squeamish about the whole situation and can't get past the feeling of being blamed. You are sitting there in the interpretive level, trying to get everyone else to understand the serious implications of the information and talk about various options. Everyone is caught up at a different level of the thinking process. To try to force a decision at this stage of thinking will cause anger and disenchantment all around. The meeting could turn out to be a fiasco with everyone on a different track, some ready to get out there and implement, some angry because of misunderstandings, some others blaming the boss for not having a good planning process for resolving the situation. One of the major benefits of the focused conversation method is the time and money that can be saved in decision-making when hidden and unconscious factors are brought out into the open. You can help the entire team experience the benefits of participation by using the focused conversation method in a group setting. When a group of people sits around the planning table, they often share information and decide how to act on it. But the way in which the information is shared is a vital part of the decision-making process. The focused conversation method is designed to allow everyone to participate in the decision-making so that you get the best follow-up action with the greatest commitment and with the least confusion in a short time. Top focused conversation method could lead to a more productive meeting. First, all participants are asked to focus their attention on the objective level of information. What specific parts of the information are most clear to them? What parts need more explanation? What other information do we know? At this point, Bob's problems could have been cleared up. After the participants understand the information, they are asked to focus on the next level. Does this remind them of similar situations in the past? Does anything in the report make them uncomfortable or anxious? Or perhaps breathe a sigh of relief? Now Maria would get a chance to get her difficulty out in the open and dealt with. Next, the group focuses on the interpretive level. Questions could be asked like, what is the importance of this situation? What implications does it have? What are different ways of approaching it? You would get a chance to explain the vital points you wanted to make. When everyone has had their say, the group can move to the decisional level. Questions can be asked like, what do we need to do? What actions should we take? By this time, everyone will be open for Lakshmi's suggestions on what should be done, and they may have some constructive suggestions of their own. Even if participants are unaware of the thinking process going on in the group, the focused conversation method will help because it will move the group along a natural progression of thinking and will bring out into the open things that have to be dealt with in order to make a decision and to act.
There are many occasions to use the focused conversation method. A team reflection at the end of a seminar is an excellent one. You could ask the following questions at the ORIND levels, waiting for several answers between questions. What phrases do you remember from the seminar? What was the high point of the seminar? What was the low point? What insight did you take from the seminar? How will you use next week what you learned at the seminar? Another time to use the focused conversation method would be in briefing a team on a new policy. After reading the statement together as a team, you could ask these questions, waiting for answers in between. Which sentences stood out for you? What clarifications are needed? What situations does this policy remind you of? What are the implications for our division? What changes will we need to make?
Another excellent place to use a focused conversation is around the dinner table with your family. At the objective level, each family member might share one thing that happened to them that day. At the reflective level, members could identify highlights or challenges during the day. At the interpretive level, members might state what they learned from these experiences or how these events have contributed to their lives. At the decisional level, members might share how they might approach situations differently in the future and what they're planning to do tomorrow.
Around the world in thousands of organizations, the top focused conversation method improves communication, promotes trust, forges team spirit, and enhances creativity. It is the most versatile method of the technology of participation and can be used in almost any situation. Another important application of the technology of participation is in workshop settings. The top consensus workshop method moves the team into action by using the group's full creativity and by building consensus. The consensus workshop method has 5 stages: context, brainstorm, cluster, name, and resolve. A 5-part flowchart illustrates the process. There is a close relationship between these 5 stages and the 4 of ORID. Context and brainstorm are together the objective level. Brainstorm and cluster are together the reflective level. Cluster and name are the interpretive level. Name and resolve are the decisional level. The basic principle is to take the entire team through the 5 stages in response to a focus question, which is the object of the workshop. In the workshop method, a brainstorm of ideas is generated in response to the focus question. The brainstorm is then clustered by participants into associated information. The team discusses the significance of each cluster of data, giving names to each cluster. The team considers the relationship between each cluster and the level of consensus, and decides the next step. To review the stages: context. Discuss the focus question. Brainstorm. Brainstorm as many answers as possible. Cluster. Find associations between brainstorm items. Name. Name the significance of each cluster. Resolve. Decide the next steps. As an example of a workshop, let's face our team with the problem of coming up with an advertising campaign and use the top consensus workshop method as the process during the meeting. You can lead the meeting. All you need is a flip chart for this simple workshop. After giving an appropriate context on the reason for the meeting, you ask a single focus question to the group. What do we need for an advertising campaign? The first thing you do is get your team to brainstorm a list of ideas and write every idea up on the flip chart. You never argue with anyone or tell them that their idea is no good. You simply write up whatever they say, even if it is a repeat item. In this sample, we have stopped after only 10 ideas, but could have gone on to 50 or more. Next, you get the team to find associations between the ideas. The easiest way to do this is to mark a simple shape, like triangle, circle, square, beside items on the list that are similar in some way, starting from the top. Bob tells you that a jingle is similar to a theme song or tune. Lakshmi says that a celebrity is similar to getting endorsements. Someone mentions that having a symbol is similar to having an image that represents the qualities of the product. Finally, Maria takes a risk and says that a slogan is like having a slice of life drama. And Bob adds that these are both similar to having a storyline. Since there is general agreement about these clusters of related data, it is time to move on. In the 4th stage, you want to get the team to name the meaning behind the little groups of data. You read aloud the data marked with a triangle. Someone says that the real importance of these items in an advertising campaign is having music that stays with you long after the ad is over. Maria says that the circles are really about having credibility factors, and everyone agrees. Someone else mentions that the squares in a TV and poster advertising campaign have to do with creating memorable visual images, and everyone agrees that rather than having a fantasy ad, what we really need is a real slice of life on which to base the advertising campaign. The team has agreed to the basics for an advertising campaign, and the next step is to decide which one of the 4 items they want to work on next. The meeting is adjourned with the team knowing what it is supposed to do and feeling good about having achieved a real consensus. In many traditional planning sessions, everyone sits around a table and ideas are discussed one by one. This inevitably means that an idea will be linked to the person who mentions it. This can create a handicap in participatory planning, because an idea will often have linked to it an emotional charge from the person who gave it. Other members of the team may upgrade or downgrade the idea depending on who gave it, instead of thinking about the point entirely on its own merit. This has nothing to do with a lack of professionalism. It is simply the reflective level at work, participants making associations between people and ideas. We find it better to ask participants to write their brainstorm ideas on cards and fasten them up on the wall. In this way, attention is focused on objective-level data without the intervening personalities. The facilitator up front must work hard to ensure that his or her own personality does not cloud up the meaning of the data. Since it may be difficult to imagine how to convene a workshop using cards on a wall, with the 5 stages of the workshop method, here is a short simulated top workshop. The facilitator gives a context for the whole workshop and asks the focus question, posting it high up front. The posing of a relevant and on-target focus question affects the participant's ability to brainstorm good answers. Each participant brainstorms answers to the focus question and writes those answers on cards, 1 per card. Some cards are stuck on the front wall, making sure that the answers are read out loud and that the cards are visible to everyone. All cards will eventually be put on the wall. The facilitator asks the team to look for associations and similarities between items and moves those cards closer together, sometimes in columns. The process of clustering the brainstorm has begun. The facilitator uses neutral symbols or shapes to represent clumps, but only for ease of reference. The facilitator adds 10 or 15 cards at a time to the wall, engaging participants in more clustering before adding more cards. Putting up all the cards all at once will overwhelm many people. After the clustering is complete, the facilitator gets participants to discuss each cluster in turn and give it a name that answers the focus question. This can be time-consuming, but it doesn't have to be. When done well, a new pattern of thinking is established for all the participants. After naming is complete, the team discusses the importance of all the clusters together. The team makes decisions on what should be done next, and who should do it, and when. The team has moved into action, and important decisions have been made. At this point, it is often helpful to create a chart that holds the consensus of the team and reminds everyone of the follow-up action. The top consensus workshop method can be used in just about any situation where a group of people needs a consensus and results. You can use it for long-range visioning, root cause problem analysis, developing strategies, action planning, model building, curriculum development, and many other situations.